is very odd, Sandra, how much that song sort of segues into my meditation. We'll see if you all make the connection. Of all of C3's values, compassionate action is the most challenging one for me. And I'm guessing it might be most challenging for many of us. And because of that, it brings out my inner contrarian, the part of me that rebels against what's expected and what society deems as correct. It's not the compassionate aspect that makes me bristle. It's the call to action that activates my contrarian. As I reflected on this value, I became aware of a perception, and maybe it's my own, maybe it's true for others, that our society values action over just about everything else. Action is good, inaction is bad. Don't just sit there, do something. See something, say something. Go big or go home. We all have to be ready to leap into action, to lift the car off the child, or run into the burning building, or rescue the drowning person. Maybe this is just my own insecurity or selfishness, but I sometimes struggle with the pressure that society's definition of compassionate action places on my shoulders. Even though I know it's not true, it always feels like the grand gesture is the one that counts the most. Have any of you watched The Good Place? Yes, okay. So if you haven't, I highly recommend it. The show's premise is that when you die, you go, hopefully, to the good place if you did good deeds on earth and did them selflessly. The good place grand poobahs have been keeping score your entire life. And you get the most points for the grandest gestures, like raising millions of dollars for charity, curing diseases, or saving the penguins. This is reflective of the idea that our society puts big action on the highest pedestals, and it can leave the rest of us mere mortals feeling like our actions are just a drop of cold comfort in the ocean of despair. And it really does feel like a vast, bottomless, ceaseless ocean. It is relentless in its call for compassionate action. If I listened to it and acted on that call every time it rang out, I'd drown in that ocean, never to be seen or heard from again. That's when my contrarian nature swoops in and rescues me. It asks, okay, if you're not the grand gesture person, what does compassionate inaction look like? What would it mean to do nothing? Now, before you say, that is heartless, Beth, doing nothing is not an option, let me explain. And you might think of this as compassionate action for the rest of us. I want to offer the idea that we always have a choice, and that compassionate inaction is one of those choices, and that there is such a thing. We talked a little bit about it last week in pre-talk, about how taking action has consequences. If you step in and help someone, you might risk getting hurt, physically or emotionally. You might get sued if you try to help and something goes wrong. In the worst cases, leaping before you look could get you killed, no matter how compassionate your intentions were. With action comes vulnerability, and we can't always know what's going to be safe. Some might say, it doesn't matter. But it's easier to say that when we're considering it as a hypothetical. In the heat of the moment, our inaction might just be what saves us. But I don't even think of that as the real opportunity for compassionate inaction. We have a chance to practice it in much more subtle ways. For instance, biting our tongue when we feel a snarky response building up. Skipping the unsolicited advice when someone we care about just needs a shoulder to cry on. Not jumping to the rescue or being the hero of someone else's story. Turning off the news and releasing those feelings of helplessness so that we have the energy and compassion left for the loved ones that are right in front of us. And my favorite, compassionate inaction, being a quiet and loving witness to someone's joy or pain while looking like inaction on the surface can be the most profound action of all. I've come back so many times over the past 5 years to a question that gives me comfort when I'm torn between action and inaction, and this idea that no matter what I do, I can barely cause a ripple in that ocean. It can feel so overwhelming that I wonder, as I've heard some of you ask, what's the point? But I ask the question, what's my work to do? It helps me sift through it all and decide where my choice of inaction can open up space for compassionate action that aligns most closely with what pulls at my heart and my soul in the deepest ways. That means I might say no to some actions, and that's okay. My no might be your yes, and vice versa. I might not be the soup kitchen type, and you might not be the conflict resolution type. What we have to remember is that between the two of us, we have it covered. Together, we are 2 drops in the ocean, and when we join with others, we're a tidal wave of compassionate action. Namaste.